What we're here to do is talk about our vision for the Green New Deal. Set the stage for what, getting clear about what we want the Green New Deal to mean and what it should be about. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is, how is the Green New Deal different from any other climate action plan? And really the heart of the Green New Deal idea is that we can't tackle climate crisis in isolation. We need a vision that also addresses growing inequality, rising racism, and other critical issues. These are social justice issues, right? We also need a vision that lifts up Indigenous rights. So the next question that's asked is, why is it important to build a vision that addresses inequality and racism as well as the climate crisis? Well, there are two reasons. The first reason is it's the right thing to do. How many of you have heard of the term climate apartheid? Yeah, that's sort of what's coming, is a climate apartheid. Only those who can afford to adapt will. So it's generally the people who are already suffering under inequality, they're going to be hit the hardest. So that's one of the reasons. It's a moral thing, it's an ethical thing, it's the right thing to do. And the second reason is that it's the only way for us to build power together, is if we include people, if we address inequality and racism and Indigenous rights, and we all come together. So much of what you hear today is about division. Populism, division, right? We're constantly being divided. And what comes with the divide? Divide and conquer. I'm sick of being conquered, right? It's time for us to unite, join together, and push for collective action. That's what we need, and that's what the Green New Deal is about.
What are million Canadian workers going to do for a living? Especially in Western Canada. It turns out we don't need many people to farm. I used to be a farmer, and there's a lot of ex-farmers. It turns out that you don't need many farmers. Mining employs a few thousand people, but that's about it. And if the world starts to do the right thing on climate change, and oil demand starts to fall, there's a lot of productive capacity out there. That's the reason that oil prices are relatively low. Saudi Arabia can turn out oil fairly cheaply. A lot of places can turn out oil fairly cheaply. When demand starts to fall, because maybe electric cars are proliferating or people are just doing the right thing on climate change, when that demand starts to fall, the price of oil is going to start to fall, and who's going to be forced out of the market first? The highest cost producers. What is the highest cost of oil production in the world? The tar sands. We are not far from one of the last major economic, one of the main economic engines of Canada starting to sputter, starting to slow down. And if we don't get ahead of that, if we don't install a new and better economy before that happens, we're going to have a lot of trouble in Western Canada. We're going to have a lot of trouble figuring out how to employ the millions of people that live out here. And I'll just tell you one more bit of bad news, and then I will get to the good, I promise. The other thing that worries me about, especially the Western Canada economy, is it's turned into what I think of as the H3 economy. And H3 stands for has to happen here. Has anyone noticed nothing happens here in the economy that doesn't have to? I mean, we build and renovate houses, that has to happen here. We farm and we mine and we cut timber, but you can't do that somewhere else. We produce energy, etc. We've got some services, but nearly everything that happens in our economy has to happen here. And the other way of thinking of that is, everything that could be moved somewhere else has been. There isn't a lot of new industries and sectors flowing into this part of the world. Actually, they're being taken away. So the invisible hand of the global economy isn't going to give us a new economic engine when the fossil fuel sector starts to slow down. We need to do that for ourselves, and that's really where the Green New Deal is so important. So the question that every political party should be talking about is, what are 19 million Canadian workers going to do for a living? And here's where we get to the good news. Canada has tremendous potential when we're thinking about the Green New Deal. I said to someone one day, we need to rewire, refuel, replumb, and retool the Canadian economy. And they said, well, that sounds like a lot of work. And I said, exactly, a lot of work and a lot of workers. The transition to a sustainable economy can create a whole bunch of employment, and we've got a lot of world-leading companies that we can build on. I looked it up today. Canada Solar is one of the 5 largest solar panel manufacturers in the world. It's headquartered in Ontario. Currently they're producing overseas, but Canada Solar could bring that solar production back to Canada. New Flyer Bus Company in Manitoba, a world-leading supplier of electric buses. I was talking to someone in an urban government, and I asked about electric buses, and they said, maybe a pilot plan down the road for maybe a bus. And I said, Shenzhen, China's got 16,000 of them, right? And they're producing 100,000 electric buses in China every year. They've got 500,000 of them on the road already. And most North American cities are thinking of piloting one. Bombardier in Quebec, until recently, they were the largest high-speed train maker in the world. Think about that. Until recently, the biggest high-speed train maker in the world was a Canadian company. And when I talk, I'm a big fan of trains and rails. But people always say, it's not going to work in Canada. Too sparse a population, we can't build all that track. Between 1880 and 1918, with hand tools in a sparsely populated world, in a country that was much less rich than it is today, we built enough track to cross Canada from coast to coast 7 times. Surely, with a much higher population density, much richer with better technology, we could build some high-speed rail. We could employ people in Canada building those trains. Electric vehicles, we could build those. Even electric tractors to decarbonize agriculture. New Flyer bus company with their electric buses isn't far from Bueller Versatile in Manitoba. Canada could become a world leader in zero-emission agricultural equipment. So there's tremendous potential, but we need to seize upon it, and fairly soon, because the economy we have isn't going to last another 10 years. We need to put a new economy in place.
It's a vision of rapid, inclusive, far-reaching transition to slash emissions, to protect critical biodiversity, to meet the demands of the multiple crises we face, and create over 1 million jobs in the process here in Canada. And those jobs could be created in the sectors that Darren Coleman talked about very, very easily if we just had the will, political will, public will. So the Green New Deal in Canada rests on those 2 principles, that it must meet the demands of Indigenous knowledge and science and cut Canada's emissions at least in half within 11 years, while protecting cultural and biological diversity. But the second key principle is, I think, the one that's the easiest to remember, is that it must leave no one behind. We must build a better present and future for all of us. So that's what we're here to do tonight. Make sure I'm doing the right thing here. So we're going to go into an exercise that's called the green and blue lines exercise at your tables. What I want you guys to think about is the green lines are meant to be things that we need, that people and communities and institutions want. The things that we're going to be trying to push government policymakers to do, right? So these could be things that you want to see in the Green New Deal in order for you to personally be on board, or what you think it would take to get your neighbors to be on board. Those are the things that I want you to think about when we kind of write green lines in your table. The other thing we're going to talk about is what we call blue lines. So blue lines are things that we can do individually, right now, ourselves, with our own families and friends and in our own community, that you can personally take ownership of. So some examples, for instance, that you can jot down in your tables. Green line examples might be affordable, low-cost, low-carbon housing for all. Federal job guarantee programs for retraining workers who will be affected. If you're an oil sands worker and you're feeling threatened that your job may not exist, those are people we cannot have left behind. So those are the kind of things that you want to include as a policy plank in the Green New Deal. Another Green Line example might be expanding transit infrastructure, or public transit, or high-speed rail coast to coast, right? So those are the Green Line examples. The Blue Line examples would be, if you were to say personally, engage with a discussion with your civic leader, your member of, your city councilor. It could be that you go to your own child's high school or to their elementary school to give a talk or discussion about climate change. So many times we see our young people right now taking all of this action, taking all of this initiative on their own because they don't see adults doing it. We need to give back to them, and that's a great way you could do it personally. Go into your student's class and try and talk about what you are doing. So it's not about finding the perfect wording, it's about creating awareness. It's about building a common vision. It's about connecting from person to person. And that's why it was so important for us to get to know each other with our introductions when we started. So before we get started, we're going to take like a 5 or 10 minute break to do a little bit more. If you need to stretch, do a body break, maybe get a snack at the back. We've got some water and some juice back there. But after that 5-minute break, when I start ringing the bell and getting the mic, I need you to get back to your tables, sit down. You're going to do some hard work for about 25 minutes or so, and go into these discussions, your breakout discussions. So I'll need you to designate someone at your table to be the note taker, and then we'll start with a couple minutes of instructions and let you get going. So I'll have a short break, bio break, and then we'll get right back at it. So.